Last night the bowl shattered against my face, and the soup burned like shame. My son's fist followed, once, twice, until the kitchen tiles blurred and the world went small and ringing. He wiped my lip with a napkin, said I'd tripped, and went to bed as if bruises were housekeeping. This morning I rose at 5 a.m., painted the damage with expensive foundation he bought for me, and set eggs, toast, and black coffee in front of him like a waitress afraid of the bell. My name is Monica. I am 61, and the person who hurts me most shares my eyes. Ethan sat in his immaculate suit, scrolling through his phone, ordering hurry the way other men order lattes. He did not look at me when Savannah clicked through the door in high heels and a mint dress, kissed his cheek, and addressed me in a tone as sweet as tea. She keeps that tone for company. When we're alone, I am furniture that cleans. He slid a small box across the table for show. Makeup, he told her, for the little scrapes Mom got when she tripped. I thanked him because fear is clever at mimicking gratitude. The truth was still drying on my lip. After breakfast, he adjusted his red tie, leaned to my ear, and reminded me that secrets keep a roof over my head. They left hand in hand, perfect as a picture. I stood at the window and watched the black sedan, bought, like most things lately, with money I earned over 40 years as an executive secretary, sweep away down our quiet street. I had bought this house 3 decades ago on discipline and overtime after my husband left. I had believed walls could keep a woman safe. I was wrong. It began 3 years back when Ethan's first marriage collapsed. He arrived with a suitcase and a boy's wounded eyes and asked to stay a little while. At first, he was helpful, then critical, then controlling, then violent. He took over my bank account for my safety, redirected my monthly pension of $1,200, and rationed me $20 a week like I was a child on allowance. He married Savannah, 25 years younger, airbrushed ambition wrapped in a perfect smile, and the house became a stage where I was cast as maid. When meals weren't flawless, when a shirt wasn't pressed, when quiet wasn't absolute, his temper audited me. Last night's soup had been the worst, the bowl exploding, the slaps, the hard speech about perfection followed by a kiss on my forehead like a counterfeit blessing. By mid-morning, dread met duty. Savannah had invited friends for a noon lunch. Seafood, pasta, salad, dessert, and the good white wine. He tossed me 3 $20 bills as though conjuring plenty. I powdered my bruises, wrote a careful list, and walked to the store with the small shuffle of someone trying not to draw attention. At checkout, I ran into Clarice, my widowed neighbor with warm eyes that see what you try to hide. She noticed the swelling I had failed to erase. I lied about a cabinet door. She didn't press, only told me she was home in the afternoons if I ever needed anything. The offer landed like a hand on a drowning shoulder. Back in my kitchen, I stretched $60 to a meal for 5. Frozen shrimp, pasta on sale, a decent cheap wine, lemons, romaine, eggs for tiramisu. As pot simmered, the phone rang. A measured voice introduced himself as the company accountant and asked if I could come to the office at 3 p.m. to discuss discrepancies involving my bank account. My heart lurched. Ethan handled every password, every transfer. What could my account have to do with his job? I agreed to meet, then set the phone down and set the table with the good china I once promised myself I would only use for joy. At 12 p.m. sharp, the doorbell rang. 3 women glided in beside Savannah. Sleek hair, expensive handbags, laughter like glass. I poured wine, served shrimp pasta that tasted better than fear, and smiled until my cheeks ached. One guest introduced herself as Evelyn from legal, and my stomach dropped through the floor. Evelyn was my younger sister. We had not spoken in 2 years, a silence born of pride and the quiet drift families pretend is weather. She was quick. She saw the disguise on my face, the tremor in my hands, and played along without a flicker. "A pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Davis," she said for Savannah's benefit, then kept her gaze on me like a lifeline I wasn't yet brave enough to grab. The table talk turned to careers and weekend plans. Savannah bragged that Ethan takes care of all my finances, then added brightly that he manages mine too, because I'm so lucky to rest after working so long. Evelyn asked about my old firm, Sullivan and Associates. I told them about decades organizing lives more powerful than mine. For a heartbeat, I felt like myself again. Then the garage door opened, and Ethan's footsteps cut through the house. He performed the charming son for our guests, set a possessive hand on my shoulder, pressed down just enough to leave a bruise later, and praised my efforts as though I were an employee of the month. When the women left, Evelyn lingered. In the doorway, she squeezed my hand and whispered, "We'll see each other soon." After they were gone, Ethan's smile evaporated. "The technician is coming tomorrow to check your computer," he said softly. "Been browsing strange websites, Mom. Shelters, hotlines. Don't do anything foolish." At 2:15 p.m., the accountant called again. Could I be there at 3 p.m.? I slipped my keys and ID into my purse, and while Ethan showered off his performance, walked out. The city towered mirror and steel around the company's 18th floor. In a quiet office, the accountant slid papers toward me and said my son had been routing company funds through my account. More than $50,000 in 6 months. "We need a formal statement to clear your name," he said gently. The room tilted. I thought of the bruises under my blouse, the bowl exploding, the lies about tripping. My son was hurting me with his hands and with my own bank card. I left the building into the wind at 4:10 p.m., numb but newly awake, and headed home. As I reached for my door, I remembered Clarice's eyes and my sister's whisper. For the first time in 3 years, something inside me shifted from survival to decision. I turned the knob and stepped into whatever came next. Ethan was waiting when I returned, lounging on the sofa as if nothing in the world could touch him. When I told him I'd been at his office, the calm cracked from his face like thin ice. I saw fear flicker in his eyes before rage drowned it. He grabbed my arm, hissed that I was confused, delusional. But the more he denied it, the clearer I became. For years I had whispered apologies. That evening my voice came back to me. I told him I knew everything. About the stolen money, the false transfers, the lies. His mouth tightened. He warned that if I opened my mouth, I'd end up homeless, labeled crazy, forgotten. For once, I didn't flinch. "I'm not afraid of you anymore," I said, and I meant it. Then came the knock on the door, Clarice's voice, worried, calling my name. Her timing saved me. Ethan lowered his hand, muttered about nosy neighbors, and retreated to his room. That night, I didn't sleep. I watched the window until 3 a.m., half expecting him to return with new fury. Instead, I saw a shadow outside. Clarice again, moving near the hedge. At dawn, I discovered what she had done. A small camera hidden among the flowers aimed directly at my kitchen. She was collecting proof. By morning, Ethan was sweetness wrapped around poison. He said we'd go to the bank together at 10 a.m. so I could clarify the misunderstanding and sign papers saying the transfers had been authorized. When I refused, he smiled and mentioned doctors, specialists in old age confusion. He could have me declared incompetent, he said. Savannah and her friends could confirm my decline. It was manipulation so polished it almost sounded reasonable. When he left to get ready, I sat at the table, shaking. Then came another knock, urgent, quiet. Clarice slipped in, pale and determined. "I recorded everything," she whispered. "His threats, his blackmail, all of it. A friend of mine works at the district attorney's office. Her name's Brenda. We have to go now." I hesitated, terrified of what Ethan might do if he found me gone. But Clarice was relentless. "If you sign those papers, he'll walk free and you'll be his scapegoat." It was nearly 8:30 a.m. Ethan would be back within an hour. Something inside me snapped from fear into resolve. I grabbed my purse, the old documents I still kept from my years at Sullivan and Associates, and followed her out. The air outside felt new, like freedom and guilt and adrenaline. At Brenda's office, a modest room packed with files, the prosecutor listened in silence as Clarice played the recording. Every threat, every insult, every ounce of control. Brenda's expression hardened. "Mrs. Davis, your son is guilty of domestic abuse, financial fraud, and witness intimidation," she said. "We can arrest him today, but you need to file a formal complaint." My heart pounded as I signed the papers. While Brenda called the police, I sat gripping Clarice's hand. At 10:30 a.m., a call confirmed Ethan's arrest. They had found him at my house, shouting, smashing furniture, demanding to know where I was. Relief flooded me, sharp and dizzying. For the first time in years, silence wasn't frightening. It was safe. When we returned that afternoon, the house was wrecked. Plates shattered, photos torn, cushions gutted. Brenda photographed everything for evidence. My phone buzzed non-stop with unknown numbers. "Don't answer," she warned. But curiosity won. Ethan's voice from jail sounded broken. He begged, said he loved me, promised change. "You're all I have, Mom," he cried. I wanted to believe him, but Brenda's calm voice grounded me. "That's manipulation," she said. "It's what abusers do when control slips away." I deleted the messages. That night, I stayed at Clarice's house, in her daughter's old room with floral curtains and safety in the air. Sleep came heavy but clean. No footsteps in the hall, no shouting, no trembling hands. For 3 years, I had lived waiting for the next outburst. Now, there was only quiet. Morning brought new fear. Brenda called to tell me Ethan's bail hearing would be that afternoon. "You'll need to testify," she said. "The judge must understand who he really is." In court, Ethan looked smaller in his orange jumpsuit, but his eyes burned with hatred. Savannah sat in the back row, pale and brittle. When it was my turn to speak, I told everything. The beatings, the threats, the theft, the lies. My voice cracked, but didn't break. When the judge listened to the recording Clarice had captured, the courtroom went silent. Then came the ruling. Ethan Davis would remain in custody until trial. He exploded, shouting curses that confirmed the truth of every word I'd said. Guards restrained him. I sat trembling, tears falling, not from fear, but from release. Afterward, Savannah approached me. Her voice shook as she apologized, said she'd known something was wrong but had been too afraid to act. Ethan had threatened her too. She planned to file for divorce and testify against him. For the first time, I saw sincerity in her eyes instead of disdain. When Brenda later told me the company would compensate me $20,000 and that the house was legally mine alone, Ethan had forged the deed changes, I could hardly breathe. Justice was finally moving, slow but steady. Still, nights were hard. I woke from dreams of footsteps and anger. But Clarice reminded me healing takes time. Then one morning, a letter arrived from the jail. "Dear Mom," it began, "you think you've won, but I know your secrets. The ones from Sullivan and Associates, the Williams case, the documents you altered. If you don't drop the charges, I'll expose you." My hands shook as I read. He was right. I had once removed memos under my boss's orders, not realizing it was illegal. Ignorance doesn't erase guilt. Brenda called it blackmail, but said we needed to see if he truly had evidence. Soon another letter arrived, this time with photographs of my old notes and forged warnings about tax evasion. My son had turned my past into a weapon. I was trapped again, cornered by both truth and threat, but Brenda refused to let me crumble. "We confess first," she said. We take away his power. It meant admitting my mistakes publicly, risking shame. But it also meant freedom. I agreed. The morning of the confession came with the first light of courage I'd felt in years. Clarice helped me dress. A plain gray suit from my working days, the one I used to wear when I needed to look competent and composed. Brenda met me at her office before the press conference, her expression serious but proud. "You're not walking into humiliation," she told me. "You're walking into truth." Before facing the cameras, an unexpected visitor arrived. Raphael Miller, the company director who had discovered Ethan's fraud, asked to speak privately. He was dignified, weary, and kind in a way that caught me off guard. "Mrs. Davis," he said, "I owe you an apology. If I had investigated sooner, perhaps you wouldn't have suffered this long." I told him it wasn't his fault, that blindness often comes dressed as trust, but he wasn't finished. "We've reviewed everything," he continued. "Your son's theft didn't start 6 months ago. It began 2 years ago, and the total is over $130,000. We also discovered he sold confidential contracts to competitors. We want your help, your testimony, and when this is over, we'd like you to come work for us. You have decades of experience and integrity that survived everything he did." The offer stunned me. A new beginning, steady income, a chance to rebuild. $4,000 a month plus benefits, he said, and $50,000 in compensation. My knees nearly gave out. After years of being treated as a servant, someone saw my worth again. "I'll do it," I told him. At 2:00 sharp, I stood behind a table covered in microphones. Cameras flashed, reporters murmured. I gripped the edge of the podium, inhaled deeply, and began. "My name is Monica Davis. I am 61 years old, and for the past 3 years, I have lived as a prisoner in my own home." I told them about the beatings, the stolen pension, the blackmail. Then I told them about my own mistakes, how, decades ago, I had followed orders that blurred into wrongdoing. "My son found those mistakes and used them to silence me," I said, my voice steady. "Today, I take that power back. I confess them myself." The room went quiet except for the hum of cameras. "To every woman who hides her pain behind makeup," I continued. "To every mother afraid of her own child. Every wife who believes silence is safety. Don't. The shame isn't yours. Freedom is worth more than reputation." When I finished, the reporters didn't shout questions. They simply stood in silence as if unsure whether to applaud or cry. Brenda placed a hand on my shoulder, whispering, "You did it." Later that day, the district attorney announced they would not press charges against me. My voluntary confession, combined with proof of Ethan's manipulation, made me more valuable as a witness than as a defendant. That evening, I walked through the door of my house, for the first time since his arrest. It smelled like dust and wreckage, but it was mine. Clarice stayed with me the first few nights for safety, bringing blankets and her quiet humor. We scrubbed away the last stains of Ethan's rage together. As I made my bed, the silence didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt earned. The next morning, my phone rang, a call from the county jail. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, but curiosity won. His voice was small, almost unrecognizable. "Mom," he said, "I saw your press conference. You destroyed me." I breathed slowly, choosing my words. "No, Ethan, you destroyed yourself." There was a long pause, then the tremor of a child lost inside a man. "Will you ever forgive me?" "Someday," I said. "When you understand what you've done, when you learn to change, maybe." But I'll never forget I hung up and stood there in the still air of the kitchen, the same place where he once spilled my blood over soup. The light through the window was soft and clean. The following week, I started my new job. Walking into that office building with my head high, carrying only my experience and my scars, I realized something. Survival isn't enough. You have to claim life again after the fear ends. The first paycheck I earned felt like a second birth. Proof that even at 61, I could start over. I know many women watching this will see themselves somewhere in my story. Maybe not in the bruises, but in the silence, in the way fear teaches you to make yourself small. Don't speak before your silence becomes your cage. Because sometimes the only way to heal is to drag every secret into the light and watch it lose its power over you. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to help more people find the strength to break free from their own shadows. And tell me in the comments, what moment in your life taught you the true meaning of courage?